Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Chalban Shir, the weekly Chalban Shir. Friday mornings. If you're here, it's for the recording. If you're here in RBS, it's the best Chalban Shir in town.
Here.
And the only one. Okay. Last week, we're going to do a little bit of recap as a runner, and then we'll jump right in to this week. Last week, we began speaking about, or continuing on the theme of Galus and Geula. We saw last week how this is synonymous with mochin the godless and mochin the katnus, good moods, bad moods, high levels of consciousness, low levels of consciousness. And we left off specifically talking about how when we got sent to Galus, and our nation got scattered throughout the land, Torah took a hit. And this is what we're in the middle of developing. That Torah, it's in a certain way was diminished, or the revelation of Torah in a certain way was diminished, and we're developing this idea. And I was thinking after last week's shir, just to add on Hosafa, because I think we were struggling with a little bit and an unspoken tension, which is, well, Torah is perfect. Torah is pure. Torah is Hashem's mind. So how can you say Torah took a hit? And we're gonna develop this further today. This is going to be our topic of discussion today. And I think that it's really not so crazy to say that. That even we know that there's infinite depth of the Torah. We know that the Torah, it's brought down, I'm sure we've all heard this, right? The introduction, the Ramban's introduction to the Torah, the entire Torah is Hashem's names, right? We look at the Torah and we don't see that, right? Or the whole Torah, it's brought down from different tzaddim. The whole Torah could be found in the word Bereshis. And not only the whole Torah could be found in the word Bereshis, but the whole Torah could be found in the first letter of the first word, Beis, right? We're all familiar with hearing things like this over our lives. And we don't see that, right? So to say we have a diminished version of the Torah in a certain way, or our relationship to the Torah is diminished, the Gilui HaTorah, right? In the Sifrei Kabbalah, they make a distinction between the Etzem and the Gilui, the actual thing itself, and the Gilui, the Etzem Hashem, that no man could understand. But the Gilui of Hashem, the way Hashem reveals himself in the world, that we could start to try to wrap our minds of, and that's where we come into the different shemus of Hashem, Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, Elokim, Shakai. These are all Gilui. They're not the Etzem, right? So it's the same thing with the Torah. Maybe you can say, again, this is my own Hasafa, maybe you could say that there's a difference between the Gilui and the Etzem, that the revelation of the Torah and the way we relate to it, we don't see how the entire Torah is Hashem's names. Clearly the Ramban saw that, right? The one, he wasn't just speaking theoretically. The one who revealed it is the one who saw it, who went above that to be able to reveal it to us. But so I don't think it's so crazy. Additionally, right, we know that there's the famous Mishnah, Miyom Shecharav Beis Hamikdash, right? The day the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and we're going to get into this today as well. The fruit lost its taste. The whole world went grayscale. And so to say that not only is Am Yisrael in a diminished state.
Each day is worse than the day before.
What?
Each day is worse than the day before.
Each day is worse than yeah.
It's from the Chalban. That's the same Gemara thing, right?
Okay, yeah. Right. Exactly, right? Good connection. I didn't think of that.
I think so, sure. You don't
know. I do know. Okay. I didn't think of it.
Tell me which one it is.
But so again, it's not so. I'm just bringing it down a little bit, just to flesh it out a little bit. Like the world's not the same, and the Torah's not the same. So these are things that we kind of know already. Like it's not just putting it within the context of things that we already know. Like there's no nevuah, there's no, right? The whole world went down a level when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So we don't have access to that Gilui, that Nevuah, that... Okay, we'll jump in now. So in the photocopy sheets, I think it's 4 in the last paragraph. Ba'osher Chai. Yeah? So again, we're talking about when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the soul of our nation left. Our national soul kind of disappeared, and we went scattered out. Ba'osher chai hakodesh shel hamikdash v'nevuah. In the richness of the fullness of life, shel hamikdash v'nevuah, of the Beis Hamikdash and the prophecy. Hirgish kol yachid mi Yisrael es mashmiot chaya begadlus atzuma. Right, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, when there's prophecy, every individual of Yisrael, they felt the greatness of their life. They felt the implications of bigness. Kechelek mitoch avuka kodesh hameira tevel mulah, like a spark from the holy flame that lights, that gives light and fills the world. Hashabbos, Shabbos, hatfilin v'hatzitzis, wearing tefillin and wearing tzitzis. Talmud Torah ve'esek hamitzvos, kamo gam hamalacha ubinyan haaretz, learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and working and building the land. Hayu yachtav l'ni'imim v'gidim be'ilan rav srigim. These were all considered together like the sinews and the roots of a tree. Rachav yadayim, it was expansive. Shenechlalu bo kol Yisrael kahavya achas. Right, so again, at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, we all felt the richness of life and the power of our mitzvahs and the Torah. Imam heiru b'chol oz kol matmunei Torah, and with that illuminated all the strength of all the hiddenness of the Torah. Sisra v'razeh, its secrets and its hiddenness. B'yichudei kodesh, in the oneness of holiness. B'chachmas hanevuah v'horasa, with the wisdom of prophecy and its teachings. V'ayu Yisrael lomdim et sod nishmasam, and Klal Yisrael would learn its soul, meaning the soul of the Torah. Ad la sagas hanevuah, until they reached a level of prophecy. Kiflaim ki yotzei Mitzrayim, like the Gemara Megillah Yudal and Amalef says, there were double the amount of people that went out of Mitzrayim that were nevuahs. So this is the heyday, right? This is Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael with Shlomo HaMelech, right? With the national identity intact, coming together, with the religious idea intact. And this was the big three aligning, right? Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, the national idea, the religious idea, and the spiritual idea, all coming together. And we're going to develop these things. This was also like Shlomo HaMelech, right? That the world was filled with Chachma, and he ruled. He ruled over the whole world basically, and he wrote Mishlei, which was full of wisdom, and that was represented all by this great thing that was happening at that time. B'mitzias adira shel, next page. B'mitzias adira shel giloi shchina. In this time period of revelation of Shechina, lo hayu tzarich ledaber al tachlas hamitzvos v'schar kiyumam. We didn't have to speak about the purpose of doing mitzvahs and its reward. Ki hayu Yisrael roim ulamam b'chayam, because Klal Yisrael saw it with their own eyes. B'ziv hakodesh asher b'beis Hashem, with the splendor that was illuminating from the Beis Hamikdash. Shehispashet lechol marchev haaretz, that went out to all the vastness of the world. V'rom gavoa hitkale ba'aliyas ha'am kula l'regel, and with the revelation that came out with all of our nation that would come be ola l'regel. Elu hayu haperos hamasukim shel avodas hakodesh. These were the fruits of our labors of holy avoda. Zoharim umeirim, radiating and illuminating, betachlitam betoch chai ha'olam hazeh, with their full purpose in this world, right? At that time, and we're going to learn about this, they didn't teach about schar va'onesh, right? Going back to what we were saying. They didn't teach about reward and punishment. That if one day, if you keep doing this mitzvahs, you'll have a bank account full of reward. They didn't have to talk about that then. The emphasis was, it was self-evident. Here, we have Shlomo HaMelech, we have the Beis Hamikdash, right? We all know the windows, they were pointed outwards, because the Beis Hamikdash was the light of the world. And it was just, we had our nation in Eretz Yisrael, and it was the heyday. It was amazing. So you didn't have to tell someone, well, if you do a mitzvah, you're now going to get reward for it. Because the tachlis itself was revealed. It's like it says, right, ha'es otze pri, right, the bark and the tree was the same. The bark and the fruit was the same. So you didn't have to say the process of making bread, of that you're going to go through this sidur de pas, this process of life where you're going to get rewarded at the end. No, it was the roles themselves, right? The process and the reward were one and the same. So you didn't have to go ahead and now talk about schar va'onesh like we do nowadays. To fill everyone in who's joining us, that we began the Sefer talking about schar va'onesh, how that was really kind of like the best we could come up with in Galus. And that wasn't the main thing. The main thing was the truth itself. That the truth itself, and he's going to develop this today, that the truth itself, to serve Hashem for the sake of serving Hashem, and Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, and the holiness that radiated out with that, it was self-evident. You didn't have to do the marshmallow test with someone. You didn't have to teach them about prolonged gratification, because the oneg of serving Hashem was self-evident. Alafikach, lo timsa b'sifrei hanavua dibur ve'esek b'chai olam haba. Right? This is amazing what he's saying. Therefore, as we all know, in all the sifrei nevuah and in the Torah, we don't found them talking about olam haba. This is a classic question. V'siachsus le'olam hazeh ke'emtzai el hatachlis. And relating to this world, as we know in Pirkei Avos already they do, that this world was a prusdor. But we don't find that from the Torah Shevichsav, from in the Chamishei Chumshei Torah in the Tanakh. You never find that, ever. It doesn't talk about the next world. It just doesn't. There are hints, there are remazim, right? The Torah doesn't talk about Chai Olam Haba because it was meant for this world. It wasn't meant for next world, right? In fact, we say Schar B'Haya Amaleka, right? Like, meaning to say, like, reward was not the thing, because that's why the Torah didn't talk about reward.
It's pretty obvious when you got the Baitis and Sodok. Who said it? Who said the third mission in the Pirkei Avos? What? That you shouldn't serve Altiu Kavadim Hashem Shemesar.
Pras.
Because people were already starting to think about the pras.
That's right.
Not that there wasn't a pras, but that's how people were thinking. So he's saying, don't do that. Not that there isn't, but don't think like that.
Correct. And we'll pause at a moment and we'll talk about, Rav Kook. He wrote in his essay, Hamahalach Be'idei Yisrael. He really clarified this. We'll come back to that in a moment. We didn't talk about this world is a nothing. This world is a nothing. The main thing is the next world. Right? There was none of that. That's Galus thinking. Right? Ki kishaziv ha'olam haba meir be'olam hazeh. When the light of Olam Haba was radiating in this world, B'ashras hashchina elyon v'beis Hashem, with this divine presence residing in Hashem's house, Ubamaris nevuah l'kamas atzuma shel neviim, and with nevuah prophecy present, kiflaim ki yotze Mitzrayim, double the amount there was in Mitzrayim, lo hayu srichim klal l'daba schar hamitzvos umashmos kiyumim. We didn't need to speak at all about the reward of mitzvahs and the implications of performing them. Hatachlis v'eschar hayu me'irim begiloi rav u'bebehiras. The truth, I'll just translate these words, the purpose and the reward was revealing itself with such clarity. Al mitzias nifla zen nemar olamecha tira b'chayecha. Right? The truth was self-evident and it was apparent to everyone. Like it says in Brachas, Olamecha tira b'chayecha. You will see your world in your lifetime, in this world. Meaning to say, like, you'll see Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. And they were at that point of seeing Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. Means there was such achdus, there was such oneness, right? And I keep pausing on this when we come on this point. It's important to say, like I keep coming back to in my mind as I'm preparing these shiurim, like, how our chinuch is so distorted. Our chinuch is so distorted that we the constant emphasis is on schar v'onesh.
But there is a reason for that.
Well, yeah, but what we're learning is, it's like what the Chalban's doing through this process. It's like helping us weed out Galus thinking versus Geula thinking, right? Galus thinking was 2,000 years of us needing to do this, and we're going to learn in a paragraph why. And Chazal said, "Ein al Kadosh Baruch Hu ela b'dal rama shel halacha." We're going to get to that in a paragraph or two. So it was necessary, right? And one of the ideas of why that was necessary was for self-preservation, because we had this national trauma of the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed. And when the Beis Hamikdash was being destroyed, it was literally a trauma, right? We got sent off our land. We felt Hashem left us, right? Because then the other religions started emerging, saying, well, Hashem, lo bachar bo Yisrael. Hashem doesn't want you. He destroyed your home. He threw you off your land. He wants us. He wants Yeshua. He wants the Christians. He wants the Muslims. If he wanted you, he wouldn't throw you off your land and burn his house down. It was a clear rejection of you. Hashem didn't choose you. So here, Am Yisrael felt that, right? And as we mentioned 2 or 3 weeks ago by Yechezkel, he gave them chizuk, right, in Galus. But it was a clear, Am Yisrael clearly felt abandoned and rejected. And the other nations capitalized on it, and other religions, started gaining strength. Monotheistic religions, not just old-fashioned idol worship. So it was necessary for us, right? But as we get over the 2,000 years of trauma, this is the main point over here that I'm trying to come back to, right? As we're back in Eretz Yisrael and Galus is winding down, and Geula, we're in the stages of Geula as we're learning, so we have to switch our way of thinking about education. We have to switch our way that we relate to Yiddishkeit. Right now, we're in this process of weeding out that, healing from the trauma. We're in the process of the bones reuniting back in Eretz Yisrael. So we have to reevaluate, and this is what the Chalban is helping us do. He's really been shining a light on this throughout the Sefer, is reevaluating what's really authentic in a certain way. How should we should be re-relating to the Torah? How should we be re-relating to Chinuch? What new models should we be approaching and adapting? Not just sticking with the old model that was born out of necessity, out of self-preservation. And that's what trauma mode is, like fight or flight. Like I'm working with an individual, like he always has an alarm ringing in his head, even though there are no bears. He's not being attacked by anyone, but this alarm is sounding. It's constantly sounding in his head. And we have this alarm sounding in our head of self-preservation. How do I get the most? How do I get the most? How do I, that's trauma, right? That the alarm is ringing, but no one's ringing the alarm anymore, So we're able to we have this amazing, even this year is part of the Geula, right? Because we're able to reevaluate now. We have the luxury to be able to reevaluate here in Eretz Yisrael, where should we be heading? Where should we be heading with all this?
It feels scary to say that because historically, every time we think we're at that point, like this is not the first time as a nation we've felt that way, right? The reform movement, the conservative movement was exactly that we had this old historic mindset that we needed in the old country, but and you only follow whatever the Masorah says. You don't step outside the Masorah, because if you step outside the Masorah, that's it, you're dead. And now we're saying, okay, we've reached the point where it's really not about keeping within the framework of, yes, obviously halacha, what have you, but the idea of specifically going counter to what was and creating and adopting new models.
Well, this is an also.
Sorry.
This is the thing what Rav Shai is saying. It's an old new model.
Yeah.
Meaning we're not what the reformer was developing something new. But he's saying no, this isn't new. This is old. Just bring it back to the.
Yeah.
Right.
We revert back.
Our old model. Meaning you're right. It's. Meaning it was the model at some point, the same way, right? Like we talk about, going all the way back to like original halacha and.
Well, we're first of all, I want to say this is the first time in history where Am Yisrael's back in Eretz Yisrael. it's short. We're not, again, you have to be very careful about this. The Geula hasn't happened yet. It's a process, right? To say Mashiach's here, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, well, Mashiach revealed himself. Like, I would not be. To say that we're in the process of Mashiach ben Yosef, the natural process of Geula, I feel very comfortable saying that because that's what Chazal said, right? The Gra wrote that, Chalban saying that, we're going to see from the Ramchal. I'm saying, that we understand. That's one of the tenets of our faith. That is one of the Ani Mamim. What's the Ani Mamim? That of Tchias HaMesim. What's included in the Ani Mamim of Tchias HaMesim is that Hashem is always moving the word forward to the Talich HaGeula, right? That Hashem is always advancing the world. To say that we're in the process of Geula and you have Rov of Am Yisrael back in Eretz Yisrael, right? Like we're saying the bones, like we've been learning from the prophecy of Yechezkel, that the bones are reuniting with each other. Yeah, for sure. That's true. That's not me. That's Chazal. That's what Chazal say very clearly. So it definitely is vastly different than a reform movement or any things like that, because it is the first time in history where we're back in our land. And to this point over here, to say like that, I'm just tying it all together a little bit, like we're saying like other religions and other things crept in the wake of us saying like we're thrown off our land and therefore Hashem doesn't want Am Yisrael anymore. Yeah, so for 2,000, in my mind, the fact that we're back in Eretz Yisrael is one of the biggest proof that the Torah is true, right? Because for 2,000 years you could say, well, Hashem didn't choose you anymore, right? Hashem didn't want you anymore, right? And even the evangelicals, I mean, I'm speaking a little bit out of my comfort zone because I'm not an expert in this, but even the evangelicals, they understand that the Jews coming back to Eretz Yisrael is like part and parcel with the Geula. So they think we're going to come back, I think, and then Yeshua's going to take over. Again, I can't speak for them. I don't really know. But the point is like we're back. So it's like a proof because all the nevuahs and things that were said over 2,000 years ago are happening, right? So it's time for us to reevaluate a little bit, and like let it seep in and what it means, and it doesn't mean disregard everything old at all. We have to keep halacha and things like that, but it means this weeding out process, and we'll read a little more. I'll take a moment to explain this. What Rav Kook writes. We'll just say, like Rav Kook writes in his essay Mahalach Be'idei Yisrael. So he says that when Shlomo Melech, you had the three aspects. You had the religious aspect, what he calls the dati, and you had the spiritual aspect, and you had the national aspect. You had these three things. So you had the religious, which is the halacha. You had the national, Am Yisrael, the bones together, and then you had the spiritual component, right? That Shlomo Melech saw everything, right? And that was in the heyday. That was in Shlomo Melech's time. And what happened was the religious aspect of Yiddishkeit, as we're saying, it wasn't center focused. The main thing wasn't halacha. Of course, no one should take my words out of context. Of course, halacha was always there. Of course, they always followed halacha. But that wasn't the emphasis, like he's saying, right? That wasn't the emphasis. The emphasis was, the truth was self-evident. The emphasis was the spiritual idea, which was put up top. The national idea, which was put primary. And the dati, the religious idea, was, I don't want to say it was ancillary. Again, it was present. It was like the Chalban saying it was present, but it wasn't the main thing. Right?
So just to clarify that, isn't that because it was more second nature? Meaning, if halacha is second nature to you, then it's something you do is like driving a car, right? You do it. Of course, you do it with the kavanah, with the idea that Hashem present. But if you're living in a world of forgetfulness, then halacha has to become the top because it's not second nature anymore. Correct. So a world where it's second nature, that's fine to have it as...
Correct. It was natural. It was very natural. It was organic to keep halacha. It wasn't this heavy top-down type of thing, oppressive type of thing.
It's not quite that feeling, seemingly.
Correct. But what he's saying is that the Jews, right? So what happened was we knew that we were going out into Galus, right? Everyone knew that, right? We were surrounded. We were thrown out. The 10 tribes were already thrown off. So there was a great organization. It was an amazing Jewish organization. Maybe you guys heard of it. It was called the Anshe Knesset Hagadola, Ezra, and he took his organization, and a lot of the things that Ezra put into motion, we still do nowadays, like the standardized sitter, right? All different sorts of halachas. That was all from the Anshe Knesset Hagadola, the Men of Great Assembly, and that was put in all around the times of Ezra and his group of people. And what Ezra sought to do, and this was his stated goal, I mean, this was no secret, he wanted to preserve Yiddishkeit for the 2,000 years of Galus that we're still in. So what happened was simultaneously, when the Jews, this is not my own idea, I'm saying over what Rav Kook writes. It's a long essay. You could spend a long time learning the essay. This is the Rosh Prakim of it. So what happened was at the time, the Jews were being thrown off their land. The national body's disintegrating, right? The spiritual idea is not there anymore. Right, that got stripped away. So Ezra and Chazal, they emphasized the religious idea to be primary, right? Until we're going to see in a moment that right, this is it. You want to stay a nation for 2,000 years, halacha is primary. And what happened was the national idea, we didn't have a nation anymore because we were thrown off our land. That mamela was oispato. And the spiritual idea also took a backseat because it wasn't like we're learning Shlomo Melech and Heyday. Right? So now that we're back in Eretz Yisrael though, right, these things are now reemerging. Right? That's why it's so hard for people to really wrap their mind around the national idea, this idea of Am Yisrael back in Eretz Yisrael, because it's kind of new almost. Because we didn't have it. We didn't have it for so long. Right? And to see that it was such an important thing, Eretz Yisrael was such an important thing, we also didn't have it for so long. Right? We also didn't have it for so long, but obviously if you open your eyes to the words of the Torah, it's true, right? Hashem reveals himself in this podcast you sent me from this person who lives in Gimel, I think. I did some research. He says, like, Hashem reveals himself to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and what does he say in their first meeting? He says, I am Hashem, and, when the land is going to be yours. Right? Because in your first introduction to someone, that's like where you say your thing. Right? So Hashem's revealing himself to Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, he's saying, Eretz Yisrael is going to be yours. That's like part of his mission statement. It's like part of his name, part of his identity is with Eretz Yisrael, and Am Yisrael back in Eretz Yisrael. It's like the first meeting, and he puts it out on the table and says, here it is. So like the national idea was something that was always there, but it's hard for people to wrap their mind around. It's hard for people to really understand this,
I think we serve Hashem through fear, through Yiras Hashem, more than Avos Hashem. It's the joke that Litvak's, Chassidim love Hashem, and Litvak loves the Shulchan Aruch. That's the only way people connect is Mishabur. I mean, nothing against that, but that's no one sees the Avos Hashem, everyone sees Yiras Hashem, because that's what we've been doing for.
That's what we've been doing. Yeah.
We've been in Galus more than we've been out of.
Yeah.
Not in Galus.
It's a misgeret.
Yeah.
Halacha is a misgeret.
It's like a fence.
Okay, we'll go weiter. So this is how it has become in our lives. Begadlus hamoichin b'hashpas hakodesh she'ir rabanu. Right? Sorry, that's what it was in the richness of their lives of yesteryear, right? With great levels of consciousness and the shefa of kodesh. V'nei, I'm like resettling myself. It got me fired up about this topic of the national. I feel like v'nei begalus olam choshech ba'adanu. Right, and galus is the world of darkness. Nistalka hashchina nigna haneshama. The shchina was removed. The soul was left. V'aguf noser levado shochein ba'afar. And the body was the only thing left, and it resided in dirt. V'shavar achar shavar, breaking after breaking. Nifrad aduf l'resisim. It disintegrated. It decayed. V'notranu v'nosaranu avikdak. And we're left. It disintegrated into powder. Pzurim ba'artzos tevel, spread out to the nations of the world, lo shrina, without the shrina, lo hitgalut Hashem, without the revelation of Hashem, lo tiferes u'kavod malucha, without the glory of our kingdom, lo mikdash lo nevuah, without the mikdash, without the nevuah. Yerida playim zu harachika ma'od es hanefashos me'etzam hayacholis Litzayir Savodas Hashem HaGalus V'Adir Shebemigdash. Right, this deep plunder that we had, it distanced our souls from even being able to picture and imagine in our minds what it was to serve Hashem in godless, in a supreme state of consciousness when the Mikdash was around. Right, to understand and perceive the Torah in its shleimus. V'nimsa pe'er adira bein avodas Hashem harigila b'yamim kadmonim. And, v'nimsa far. Sorry, not pe'er. It seems like we're far from this great, the great early days. Ubein mamed hachayim begalus. Right, between where we're living now. Levikach huchrach haTorah leredes mimalasa. Therefore, it was necessary for the Torah to descend. That the Torah itself went into a certain symptom, into a certain granule. Dalet amas shel halacha. The dalet amas of halacha. The 4 cubits of halacha. Asher tatim al madregas hachayim v'tfisaso shel hayachid b'chol yimei galus. That this went down all the way to us, that now Torah could become tangible to us and preserve the individual throughout Galus. Kidei lechayosenu b'meshech haGalus, that we should become alive. It's not talking chas v'shalom and ayota bad about halacha, and no kilkel in someone's shmirus halacha should come out of our conversation and all to say, well, it's not important, right, at all. But the halacha is what kept us alive. It gave us life throughout Galus. Ki'im haisa nisharas b'tokev zahora. Lo hayusro shabagolas yachom lahavin sicha v'siga. Right, with the halacha radiating and being strong, Klal Yisrael throughout Galus, they wouldn't have been able at all to understand anything. Me'otza miracha kachayim, from the great distance that we had in life, bein madregasam madregasam v'yunosim lo masam yichya. Without the halacha preserving us, right? Even the word preserve, it's like you keep something alive, you keep it, it gives it life, it doesn't die, right? So the halacha itself was the thing that preserved Am Yisrael and gave us life throughout Galus. Kach sodos haTorah, so too the secrets of Torah, oros hanevua, taimei Torah v'chochmas rezeya, the lights of prophecy and the reasons for the Torah and the wisdom, it's all the secrets, ne'elamas v'nignazu, became hidden from us. Ki ilu enam shaichem ela biyos Yisrael ad masam. Because these secrets and the vast hiddenness of Torah is only shaykh to us when we're on our land. Ba'asaga shchina el yona, with the comprehending the shchina. Ve'ein Yisrael shebegalus yichom liskarav el romimus otzem haTorah el yona zu. And Yisrael in Galus was not able to come close and plummet the depths of Torah and these levels of prophecy. Right? You only get prophecy when you're in Eretz Yisrael. V'nosra rak halacha. And the thing that remained to us was the halacha. Hatzad hamaisi, the practical, tangible side. Uba'osa ha'chelak ha'shayach al-chay yachid levado. And that part that was shayach, right? Like we're saying, like the national idea is only shayach when Eretz Yisrael. The spiritual idea is when you have nevuah, right? So if you strip away those two things, so what's left is the part that's only shayach to the individual. Al-osa rasisha nosa bekever. On that little part that's in the caver. Hu asher amru chachamim, this is what Chazal said, Torah bebavel kemo hevle degarme. And this is what it said, the Talmud Bavli, the Torah in Babel was only like that kista dechiyusa, the little bit of life. Sheba'a lechayos es Yisrael begalus, that came to give life to Yisrael and Galus. Shehem kemesim, because we were like dead. B'machashechem hoshivani kemesei olam. Right, the pasuk says, "I was surrounded in darkness, like the dead of the world." Zu Talmud Bavli. This was the Gemara Bavli. Zahu she'amru chachamim, and this is what Chazal say: "Miyom shechara Beis Hamikdash ein lo Kadosh Baruch Hu ela da'at al amas shel halacha bilvad." That from the time that we went to Galus, the only thing that remained was the dalet amos shel halacha. And this is the life that bounded to the individual, like when like a limb within the grave. Ve'amnam kumo oso hevle de garma. However, just like that hevle de garma, that kista de chiyusa, that little bit of life that we have in the grave, betoch osam dalet amo shal halacha tamun otsem koach v'rav. Right, hidden in that is tremendous power and strength. Lahashiv es Yisrael galusam, to bring back the geula. Right, so it's not chas v'shalom again. V'kayim l'trias ha'olamim. Right, that halacha is represented by the kista de chiyusa, that little bit of breath. So you shouldn't at all feel there's so much power there, right? The amazing, tremendous koach in the halacha to preserve us throughout Galus. Hu asher amru al mitzvahs begalus shem kitziyunim. And this is what Chazal said, that Galus and the mitzvahs in Galus are like tziyunim, markers. Hitzivi lecha tziyunim. That you should draw yourself tziyunim, reminders, markers, right? What?
It's not Torah somewhere.
Yeah, in Yirmiyah, Lamed Aleph.
One of the Torah's on Parsha.
He says over here in Dvarim. Bring this around, okay. Asher mitzad echad heim kitzion al kever. Right? This is like the marker on a grave. Like go to a kever called Tzion. Ach heim gam kitzion derech. They're like road markers. Like you could go to different roads here in Eretz Yisrael and you could see like the road markers of the Romans. Right? The Tzionim. Right? It's amazing. L'cho masa galus. For every stop we were in Galus, the Haskir l'chadishim hekedem, in order to remind us of what was. Just to explain this for a moment, and we'll end with this. You okay? Doing okay? Right? To remind us what was. Right? So he's saying that he's bringing from Chazal to show that halacha is called tziyun, right? Even we know the tziyun b'halacha, right? And in the bottom of the Mishnah Berurah over there, it's tziyunim, right? It's signs because the halacha was considered tziyunim. So what does the word tziyunim mean? Tziyani! What does tziyon mean? Tziyon means a marker or a reminder. That's the same marker by a caver. Because Chazal at the same time, by calling halacha tziyunim, reminders, or they were also being maramis to the fact that Galus is like the caver. Right? Wow. That Galus is like the caver, like you go to Uman, it's called the Tzion. You go to the Tzion, right? That Galus is like the caver. And what's that reminding us of? Of the kista de chiyusa, the little bit of life from what we once had, from the Mei Kedem. So that every place that we go, every place that Am Yisrael was in 2,000 years, we were a reminder of the heyday. We were a reminder when the Shefa HaKadosh was flowing down, and the Or HaNevuah was there, and the only thing left we have now is the halacha, with its tremendous strength and its tremendous power to keep us alive. That we have that kista de chiyusa. It's amazing, right? Right? It's like and that's Tzion. What's Tzion? Why is Eretz Yisrael called Tzion? Right? Because Eretz Yisrael is the marker place. It's the reminder of where the divine ideal enters into this world. That all kadosh, all holiness in the entire world comes through the Makom Hamikdash. The Even Shasiyah, the Ramchal explains in Sefer Mishkanei Elyon. It's an amazing sefer. It's his Kabbalistic description on the third Beis Hamikdash, based on the Pesukim in Yecheskel, right? Starting, I think, Parak Mem Dalet or something like that, when Yecheskel starts talking about it, right? That the whole Tzion, Eretz Yisrael, it's a reminder that there's the divine ideal that enters into the world, and that the Makom HaMikdash, and specifically the Even Shasiyah, was the umbilical cord of creation. All the information superhighways, all the roads, all the olamos, all the spiritual ideas, all the way from the world of Atzilus, all the way down to the world of Asiyah, gets sent. It's like a huge, picture all the internet cables in a building. They all get funneled to this one central point, and they go through the router. And that router is the Even Shasiyah. That router is the Makom HaMikdash. And that's why Eretz Yisrael is called Tzion, because not only is Eretz Yisrael and not only is the Makom HaMikdash and the Even Shasiyah, that router where all the cable wires to the world go out, but Eretz Yisrael, what the Makom HaMikdash is to Eretz Yisrael is to the world, right? And that's the Tzion, that's the reminder of Eretz Yisrael, that Eretz Yisrael is the marker. It's the marker place where the divine ideal enters into the world, and that there is kadosh and there is holiness to the world. Any source of holiness that's rooted in any place in the world, no matter in the darkest place, it all comes from Tzion. It all comes from the Makom Hamikdash that David HaMelech, we know the stories about the Evan Shasia, we know where we're talking about the thing. So the divine ideal gets expressed through the aspect of halacha, which preserves us. So a person does a mitzvah, right? Mitzvah l'shem tzavtza connects you to Hashem. A person does halachas, halichas olam, right? A person does all these things, right? And we do the halachas, and it shows us that no matter where you are, and that's why it's called halacha, because halichas olam, no matter where you are in life, no matter where your feet take you, no matter where you're going, you can connect to Hashem. It's a reminder. Oh, I gotta, my life is all caught up. Oh, I can anchor myself to a mitzvah. I can anchor myself to a halacha and be reminded. There's a borei olam. There's a bigger picture. There's a geula. There's a divine ideal. And it's amazing, everyone. And with that, we say, it's time to say good Shabbos.